Hello everyone, this is the week 3 devlog for the Tower of Madness, although this is technically week 7 if we want to get into that sort of field, but I digress. For those who don't know, I make these kind of videos to show off the progress that I made for the Tower of Madness leading up to the full release, which is on Madness Day, and also just kind of describe my thoughts and motives behind the rooms that I make, and also just kind of talk about the future for this custom level as time goes by. So, with that being said, and this applies to any and all devlogs that I make regarding this custom level, big spoilers ahead for the full release for those who don't like that kind of stuff. So, before we get into the good stuff, which, trust me, I've got quite a bit to show y'all, I just kind of want to apologize for the lack of new content, both in the recent updates that I've been pushing out and the videos that I make on this stuff. I've just been fairly busy in my personal life, and it's just kind of made it difficult to work on this as long as I usually do, if that makes any sense. But nonetheless, this busy period has finally passed, and everything should potentially go back to the status quo. As for the tutorial on how to make these custom levels, I should have part 2 for that custom level released by next week, which will go over like layers of 3D objects and whatnot, the shaders on those said 3D objects, and then basically just go into more detail on some of the proxies that we used in the last update. But anyways, I think I've rambled on for long enough. Let's go ahead and get into the new floors, which for this devlog, I've got not 1, not 2, not even 3, but 6 floors to show off to y'all. So, starting with floor 16 right here, and for those who are wondering what happened to the arena hub room that was previously here, it's right here. I just kind of bumped it up along with all the other floors and whatnot. I decided to sandwich this one in between all the other floors. Anyways, this room ended up coming to be while I was experimenting with layers and whatnot and discovered bullet block, which basically stops any and all bullets and projectiles from passing through these cubes and whatnot, while simultaneously letting you and other enemies like pass through and whatnot. And while I was playing around with it, I thought something like this would actually come in handy if you were to get hit with a hailstorm of bullets, which, trust me, and a bit of a spoiler too, it's definitely something that's going to happen in this floor. Because, like, you could simply move through this little orange window thingamajig right here, poke your gun through it, and potentially pick off the guys shooting at you one by one while being protected yourself, if that makes any sense. So, needless to say, this is a very gameplay-focused floor, which holds an emphasis on guns. And one more thing that I do want to mention regarding this floor before we move on, for those who don't know, I recently went through and reduced the size of a lot of the rooms from rooms 1 to 15 and whatnot. But this one has not yet been given this treatment yet, so I mentioned this because when I go through and scale this thing down, there's a good chance that I may have to remodel this floor. So, needless to say, this floor, good God, I can't talk, it's a work in progress. But moving on to the next floor, we're going to be jumping all the way over to floor 21 here. Now, I'm sure upon first glance it's making you scratch your head on why this room is set up the way that it is, and that's because this floor actually flips the screen upside down. And here, let me move my camera real quick to give you a better idea of what it looks like. Yeah, this is what it will look like when you initially go into it. Now, for those wondering what happened to the summit in the last devlog, it's been scrapped for the time being. I wasn't able to get the camera working the way that I wanted it to in order to navigate this floor easily. And on top of that, this is another one of those floors that relies on waypoints to work properly in order for the enemies to navigate it easily, which is something that's not exactly easy to do given the bug that's currently plaguing this custom level right now. But with that being said, I'll potentially repurpose this floor for something else. Either that, or like once I get the bug fixed, this will pop up in a later floor. But as of right now, it's currently scrapped. But anyways, what makes this new floor particularly hard is that not only is horizontal movement inverted, like left goes right and vice versa, but this floor is also filled with enemies that will attempt to toss you straight down into these spikes. But anyways, in terms of how this floor came to be, I ended up discovering that, like, when messing with the camera target around, it'll actually cause the camera to act up in weird ways. So I decided to mess around with it a little more to get it to the point where the camera is, of course, completely upside down. And I will admit, this floor was definitely one of the harder floors to make, simply because it straight up took me 2 days worth of trial and error to get it pointed and tilted to where I wanted it to be at. But anyways, that's enough of this floor. Let me fix my camera real quick. We're going to be moving on to floor 22 now, which is this absolute hellscape of a room. This is a floor that's going to be a mix of gameplay and visual showcase, which at this point, this is potentially the second floor now that is completely made up of a Blender model, which I think the last one was like either floor 18 or 19, where it's like the spiral road. Anyways, this floor is solely focused on explosives, so every enemy has explosive weapons. Nearly every enemy explodes when they die. There's like 4 to 5 guys on this halo here showering you with I mean, it's an extremely chaotic level. It's a floor that forces you to be constantly moving, and moving very fast. If you let up for 1 second, you're gonna get blown to bits. Now, originally, this floor was going to be like a simple cube with a bunch of smaller floating cubes with N51 mortars, like trying to kill you and whatnot. And the background was also going to be like a bunch of eyes moving upwards as they stare at you. But I decided to get a little more creative with this room and put my skills to the test in making models and making textures for said models and whatnot. I'm actually pretty satisfied with how this room actually turned out, though I may darken these spikes a little bit in the future. They kind of stick out a little too much, if you ask me. But now, moving on to the next floor, we have floor 23, which I'm actually not going to show you guys what this one looks like, mainly because it's a very, very special floor that I'd rather y'all experience for yourself when the extended demo releases. But if there is one thing that I'm going to say regarding this floor, is that it's a visual showcase, and for anyone who's been longtime fans of the Madness Combat series, I'm sure you will be very pleased with this floor. But that's all I've got to say regarding that floor. And moving on to floor 24 now, we have a room that experiments with mirrors. Yeah, that's pretty crazy, ain't it? This was a floor that was requested by somebody in the MPN Discord server, which, by the way, if anybody has any potential ideas for future floors, be sure to share them in the comments or wherever you find me. But anyways, yes, someone asked if a mirror room was possible in this, given that mirrors do exist in MPN, which kind of got me curious as well. So after watching a couple of tutorials online and a little bit of trial error, I did actually manage to make it, well, partially work. As you can see, if I were to go down a little bit, yeah, it's not perfect by any means, but it at the very least functions well enough to be utilized. But anyways, aside from this being a very visually gimmicky room, this floor also serves a couple of purposes in terms of gameplay, mainly to act as a form of preparation for the next floor, which is going to be a boss-themed floor that we will go over in a little bit. This spiral and death barrier is used to lure enemies into getting killed by it. One of the other purposes that this room also one of the other purposes is that it shows small glimpses of what the main antagonist is truly capable of. One of his methods of combat being essentially baiting you into traps or otherwise not so good situations that leave you vulnerable to other attacks, if that makes any sense. But that's all the more I've got to say regarding that floor for right now. And moving on to our final floor for this devlog, which is floor 25, and as you can see, it is unfinished. But it's potentially going to be the largest visual showcase for a floor by far, and also one of the first major bosses that you encounter in the Tower of Madness, but we'll get to him in just a second. So the vision that I have for what this room is going to look like is that it's potentially going to be another hellish themed floor containing a lone bridge that goes across the lava river or whatever. And the bridge itself is located right at the edge of what's essentially a lava waterfall, if that makes any sense. The boss itself is called the Iron Bull, which is basically a tower guard the size of a mag agent. But aside from him being large, what makes him different from some of his other tower guard brothers is that you cannot aggro him like you could with most golems, which denies you the opportunity to take his helmet off and expose a weak point, which I don't even know how you could even do that given the size of him. But ultimately, he is nearly invincible. Now, the key word being nearly, because he does have a couple of weaknesses. His armor can still be penetrated with certain weapons that, well, penetrate armor, like most tower guard armor. But his main weakness is going to be fire, and using fire-based weapons will drain his health much faster than using most normal weapons. But, of course, all of this is going to be a work in progress, and none of it is set in stone. But yeah, that's probably going to be it for the new floors. Even despite the progress that I've made on making floors, I've still got a lot of work to do on getting these polished for the extended demo, which is set to release on July 23rd, so about roughly a month away. But anyways, aside from that, there's a couple more things that I kind of want to bring up before I wrap this up. The first one being updates. I've got one more small update that I'm gonna push, and that'll probably be it for all the small updates before the extended demo gets released. Which, again, it's set to come out on July 23rd of this year, so mark your calendars. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about was music, because not only did I revamp all of the radios within the staircases, but I also managed to actually get with somebody on making some custom music for the Tower of Madness. Ain't that crazy? Though the music probably won't be available at full release, just simply because of the sheer magnitude of rooms with the little time that there is left to get this finished. But regardless, look forward to seeing that music for the Tower of Madness. But aside from that, that should pretty much be everything I wanted to talk about in this devlog. So in that case, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. I shall see y'all next week in the tutorial. See ya.